for the first time without the COVID-19 related constraints of the last 2 years. I really am truly happy, and I'm sure you all are, to revert to normal working conditions. And to come to this World Forum filled with people having vibrant discussions on the best way to support and strengthen the court, whether it be in the context of the Assembly or in the many side events that are being held on the most interesting topics, as you know. Nevertheless, bearing in mind the objective of minimizing the risk to the safety and well-being of delegates, court officials, and the court's staff, the Bureau of the Assembly has recommended that all attendees not actually enter the World Forum if they've been diagnosed with COVID-19 in the last 5 days, nor should they enter the World Forum if they have any symptoms that are consistent with COVID-19 in the last 5 days. And the Bureau also recommended that you might want to consider using a face mask whenever you're inside the World Forums. Now, all of these recommendations are for the protection of one and all. We have a significant agenda in front of us. We need to adopt the budget for 2023. We need to discuss issues of cooperation, the review of the court and the Rome Statute system, adopt a recommendation on the election of the registrar, and elect members of the Committee on Budget and Finance, the CBF. Before we proceed with our agenda, let us rise and observe 1 minute of silence dedicated to prayer or meditation, in particular for victims.
On the basis of a drawing of lots conducted at the Bureau, the delegation of Lithuania will sit at the first desk to the right of the President. All other states follow in the English alphabetical order. Distinguished delegates, in accordance with paragraph 1 of Article 112 of the Rome Statute, states that are not parties to the statute but have signed either the statute or the final act of the Rome Conference may participate as observers in the Assembly. Observer states are allowed to participate in the deliberations of the Assembly but may not participate in the taking of decisions. Those states that are not parties to the Rome Statute and that have not signed the final act or the statute do not have observer status. Rule 94 of the Rules of Procedure provides that at the beginning of each session of the Assembly, the President may invite those states to be present during the work of the Assembly, subject to the approval from the Assembly. I propose that the Assembly invites the following states which do not have observer status to be present during the Assembly's work: Bhutan, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Equatorial Guinea, Eswatini, Laos People Democratic Republic, Lebanon, Mauritania, Micronesia, Federal States of Micronesia, Myanmar, Niue, Palau, Papua New Guinea, Rwanda, Somalia, South Sudan, Tonga, Turkmenistan, and Tuvalu. May I take that the Assembly wishes to invite these states to be present during its work? I see no objection. It is so decided. Seating has been reserved for observer states and invited states. Seating has also been reserved for NGOs invited under Rule 93 of the Rules of Procedure. Distinguished colleagues, as the President of the Assembly, I have the honor to report on the activities carried out by the Bureau of the Assembly of State Parties this year. The full oral report of the activities of the Bureau will be included in the official records of this session. In the interest of time, I will only highlight some aspects of it, which I consider to be of particular importance. At the outset, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the two Vice Presidents of the Assembly, Ambassador Katerina Sequenzova and Ambassador Robert Ray. It is for me an honor and indeed a pleasure to work with them at the Presidency. I thank them for their support to me and the Bureau and for their hard work as coordinators of the Hague Working Group and the New York Working Group, respectively. I am extremely pleased that they are both present at this Assembly. Distinguished colleagues, the Bureau has had a fruitful and busy year. As reflected in the report, in addition to the regular monthly meetings of the Bureau, there has been intense activity carried out by the working groups of the Bureau, the review mechanism, facilitations, and focal points in the fulfillment of their allocated mandates. The Assembly owes them a debt of gratitude for conducting sometimes arduous consultations for us to be able to make decisions and achieve goals of fundamental importance to the strengthening of the Rome Statute system. Their work has been efficiently supported by the Secretariat of the Assembly. The Director of the Secretariat, together with his small team, have provided invaluable substantive and technical service to all of them, despite many challenges. Among them, as you have all experienced at the Assembly and the Court, the review process has brought us an unprecedented additional workload. I will not dwell myself on the details of this crucial exercise mandated by the Assembly, as we will have the opportunity to listen to a dedicated report during this morning plenary and at the plenary segment foreseen for later this week. At this point, allow me only to emphasize the significant progress made this year in the assessment of most of the remaining recommendations contained in the independent expert review, and to underline that a number of these recommendations have either been already implemented or are in the process of being implemented. We can all be very pleased with what has already been achieved in this regard. Excellencies, distinguished representatives, the Bureau has put a lot of effort on strengthening the system of selection of elected officials of the Court, with particular focus on the incoming election of the registrar by the judges. As mandated, the Bureau established a due diligence process for the candidates to the position to assess the criterion of high moral character required by the Rome Statute. The system was based on the mechanism adopted for the election of deputy prosecutors in 2021 and benefited from that experience. I am pleased to note that upon the completion of this due diligence process, the Independent Oversight Mechanism, IOM, concluded that there are no concerns regarding the high moral character of any of the 10 candidates who are currently shortlisted for election as the registrar of the Court. The Bureau, through the Hague Working Group, also facilitated public roundtables discussions with the candidates for Registrar of the Court in October 2022, where the candidates had the opportunity to answer questions posed by state parties and civil society. The Bureau has now submitted to the Assembly a recommendation addressed to the judges concerning the election of the Registrar of the International Criminal Court for its consideration. This recommendation highlights, inter alia, that assigning high priority to equitable geographical representation, gender balance, and an adequate representation of the principal legal systems of the world, while emphasizing the need for preserving diversity and multilingualism, as well as recognizing rotation as a useful tool. The election of judges in 2023 offers another opportunity to continue to enhance the selection system. Following discussions at the Bureau and at the Hague and New York working groups, the Bureau recommends also establishing a due diligence process for candidates for judges to be elected in December next year. The terms of reference of such a process would be decided by the Bureau based on a proposal developed by the IOM in consultation with the Advisory Committee on Nomination of Judges, considering the experience of the processes already applied to candidates for deputy prosecutors and registrar. The Bureau also recommends that the Assembly consider the request by the IOM of additional resources in the range of 30,000 euros to carry out the due diligence process for judges. In addition, and further to the mandate already received from the Assembly, the Bureau will begin its work to establish a permanent due diligence process for all elected officials with a view to reporting to the Assembly ahead of its 22nd session in 2023. Discussions on such a permanent process will certainly benefit from experience gained through recently applied diligence processes, as well as from the lessons learned on the election of the prosecutor process. In this regard, I note that on 9 October 2022, the facilitators of this lessons learned process, Ambassadors Ksenia Milenkovic of Serbia and Alexander Marschik of Austria, presented their report to the Bureau, in which they include a non-exhaustive set of points that could be borne in mind for the future. We will have the opportunity to listen directly from them at the plenary session taking place this Wednesday morning. I truly believe that much has been achieved to strengthen the selection process of elected officials at the court. In this regard, I would like to emphasize the invaluable assistance provided by the IOM. I express my deep appreciation to the head of the IOM, Mr. Saklen Hedarali, and his team for the important work undertaken in this regard, in addition to the exercise of their core mandate. We shall have the opportunity to hear more about the IOM activities at the plenary segment of the IOM taking place this Wednesday morning. Excellence.
Excellencies, as part of our examination process, the Bureau was tasked with implementing the recommendation of independent experts to address negative political issues for the Rome Statute. And in this regard, the Bureau proposes a mechanism for ensuring a concerted and appropriate response for any attack or threat against the court, its staff, or any other person cooperating with the court that could jeopardize the integrity, efficacy, or impartiality of the court. The mechanism proposed reaffirms that the Assembly of States Parties and the court share the responsibility for promoting and protecting the objectives and the work of the court. The main responsibility for coordinating an appropriate response against such threats or attacks falls to the presidency of the Assembly, always in consultation with the court and, if necessary, with the Bureau and other stakeholders. The measures adopted by the Bureau, in consultation with states parties, are without prejudice to any initiative as undertaken by other stakeholders. The Secretariat of the Assembly has prepared, on the basis of contributions made by states, parties and civil society, a compilation of measures that could be potentially taken to address any such attacks or threats over and above the mechanism. As underscored by the independent experts and also in this compilation, it's important to have a preventive set of activities for information regarding the court addressed to all stakeholders and to the broader public, as well as so as to promote the court's work. And as President of the Assembly throughout this year, I've sought as broadly as possible to engage dialogue with the international community so as to promote the court, encourage cooperation with its activities, and strengthen the universality of the Rome Statute. In this regard, I took part in many events organized by states, by regional and international organizations, by academia and civil society, both in person and virtually. On the 5th of July, I met with the UN Secretary-General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, so as to discuss the issues concerning cooperation within the UN and the Rome Statute system. In my public engagements, I've always underscored the fundamental role of the Trust Fund for Victims so as to ensure that victims get reparatory justice in an effective manner. I also worked to give greater visibility to the fund's work. From the 13th to the 17th of September this year, I traveled to Uganda with several state representatives in a joint mission with the Embassy of Ireland and the Netherlands and the Trust Fund for Victims. And this initiative on the part of Ireland, and I'm really grateful for it, gave us a chance to assess the positive impact of the Trust Fund for Victims and in the lives of victims and the communities affected by crimes falling under the jurisdiction of the court. I'd like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to all of those states who actually contribute to the Trust Fund for Victims, and I encourage each and every one of you to continue supporting the fund so that it can fulfill its crucial mandate. Distinguished representatives, the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Rome Statute next year in 2023 is a chance to give even greater visibility to the Rome Statute system and to discuss a strategic vision for the upcoming 10 years, as recommended by the independent experts. To celebrate this most important event, the Bureau suggests that the Assembly entrust it with the organization of a commemorative cycle which would kick off in New York in July of next year, 2023. It would be envisaged that the event would be held in New York, and it would include a ceremony dedicated to the treaties, and the aim of this would be to encourage states to ratify the Rome Statutes and its amendments and sign cooperation agreements, voluntary cooperation agreements with the court. I urge states, parties, and other relevant stakeholders to take advantage of this most significant anniversary so as to get involved in all of the events for promoting the court and the Rome Statute, and to organize their own commemorative activities and events at the national, regional, and international levels. By way of conclusion, I'd like to take this occasion to express my deepest gratitude to my colleagues in the Bureau for all of their support and their unwavering efforts in rolling out the ambitious mandate that has been defined by the Assembly in the exercise of their responsibilities under the Rome Statute. And now that we are entering the third and final year of our mandate, I'm encouraged by all that's been achieved, and I'm delighted to work with you so as to further strengthen the system of the Rome Statute.
May I take that it is the wish of the Assembly to take note of the oral report of the Bureau? It is so decided. The item has thus concluded its consideration of agenda item 8. And now it is the time of the adoption of the agenda. The provisional agenda is contained in document ICC ASP/21/1, and an annotated agenda is contained in document ICC ASP/21/1/addendum 1. May I take that it is the Assembly to adopt the agenda as contained in document ICC ASP/21/1? I see no objection. The agenda contained in document ICC ASP/21/1 is adopted. We turn now to agenda item 9, report on the activities of the court. The report is contained in document ICC ASP/21/9. We are honored to have the President of the Court, the prosecutor, and the registrar present today. On behalf of the Assembly, it gives me great pleasure to extend to them a warm welcome and to assure them of the continuing support of the Assembly in the discharge of their respective responsibilities. The Assembly is aware of the enormous responsibilities inherent in your offices.